so glad to see a very empowered and a very obviously strong leader that is out there in the agile community and the technology community. I felt very inspired. And so let me introduce her a little bit by reading the bio. Anu is the president and founder of Capella Consulting Group, where she specializes in executive coaching and agile transformations. She is also an enterprise agile coach and certified Scrum trainer, providing education and coaching consulting services to clients across the United States. An IT professional with over 25 years of industry experience. Look at that, that's a lot. And he holds a master's degree in psychology from Osmania University in India and a master's degree in business administration from Bowling Green State University, Ohio. And is passionate about coaching and training others, dedicated to helping achieve and professional and personal success. She is also committed to improving an agile community through several activities. She is an active member of the larger Scrum and Agile community and enjoys giving back via volunteering at various conferences. She is also a program advisor to the Scrum Alliance events groups as they plan, organize, and coordinate various conferences, retreats, and meetups around the world. So it is an honor and a pleasure to me to introduce you, the one and only Anu Smalley. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for having me. It's an honor to be here. And first, let me just tell you, the picture you see on the slide is obviously very different from the picture you see of my face. This is all thanks to COVID hair. Since we've been home for so long, I've been growing out my hair and I don't no longer have my spiky hair. So that's the big difference. I want to make sure we realize that. And thank you so much for having me here, Andrea. This is my second time I'm talking to a Guatemalan group, and it's just the groups are so engaged and so active. So I'm happy to be here and happy to share my experiences. And you know, you said I'm an empowered woman, and I think that my goal, as I was telling you before we began this talk, my goal usually is to increase the diversity in any community I step into, to increase women, generally speaking, women, and also people, minority groups, to bring more of those people into the mainstream, because we will only get better when we hear everyone's voices. So that's why I created this talk about leadership and women.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for your time and for being here. We're all so happy. I am going to stop sharing my screen so
Okay,
you can share yours.
perfect. Thank you. All right. So I am going to share my screen. I have a few slides that I want to walk through, and then we'll open up for questions. And I mentioned to Andrea, unfortunately, I do not speak Spanish. I wish I did. It's a beautiful, beautiful, poetic language. And if there's anything that I say that you don't understand, please ask in the chat window, and Andrea will step in and we'll try and make sure we can land some points that are needed. So my talk is all about leadership and does gender matter? It's Andrea just made a point of saying she saw me as an empowered woman. So how does women or gender connect to being women leaders? That's going to be my focus, to see the state of leadership in the world, how women are seen today, and then what can we do? That's going to be my focus. So as Andrea said, my name is Anu Smalley. One of my mottos, the things that I teach all the time, is that leadership is a team sport. You cannot become a great leader all by yourself. You need a group of people who are going to help grow you, give you feedback, and teach you when you're falling off the rail, so to speak. Why do I do all of the things I do? Is for these two kids. These are my daughters, Olivia and Jillian. They're much older now. They're 23 and nearly 23 and 19 and a half. But every time I work with groups of women, especially like your group, Women Who Code, teaching young women the importance of stepping into technology and computer science, I do it for these two girls. Like, this is this is, and you are the future of our world, and that's why I do these talks. Um, so we, as a woman leader, I've seen so many differences in how women are treated, right? So that is why I wanted to do this talk. And this is the second time I'm doing this talk about gender parity, or the differences in gender bias, how women are treated in leaders versus men. The sad part is I will never see gender parity or equality amongst genders in my lifetime. It will not happen in the next, I don't know, 30, 40 years. So I'm hoping that by doing more talks like this and the work of your groups, we will get gender parity up sometime. Maybe my children will see that. Um, that's why we do it, right? To increase awareness. So let's look at women in leadership roles today. My goal here is to raise awareness of how many women are in leadership roles. There's lots of research that's been done. So I want to start with some data. I want to start with some facts. Right? So here are 8 facts about gender parity. And parity basically is little different than equality. Equality just says a man and a woman have the same opportunity. Parity is little deeper of equality, of saying not only do we have the same opportunities, are we treated the same way? Do we have the same income? Are we expected to behave and talk the same way? There's so many times I feel that if I'm too aggressive, because I'm a woman, people will look at me different. That's what we mean by gender parity. So there's a company called McKinsey and Company in the US, and they're a global organization. So they did this research in 2019, and they came up with 8 facts, and I pulled this out from their research. So they talked about the fact that across the world, globally, gender parity is at 68%. That means 42% of the world, there's things in the world that are so unequal and so unfair that these guys found some research. So here's the data they found. Women make up half the world's population, but contribute only 37% to global GDP. Imagine that. We make up half the world's population, but we only contribute 37% to the GDP, right? We can add $12 trillion more to the global GDP by 2024 if the gender gap is reduced. And that 12 trillion is the size of the GDP of Japan, Germany, and the United Kingdom combined. So that's what we can do if we can reduce the gender gap, right? 195 million fewer women than men are literate. That means there are parts of the world where women don't have the opportunity to be educated. If you think about, if you've heard of Malala from Afghanistan, she's fighting for the rights of girls to be educated in Afghanistan. So there are 195 million women, fewer women than men who are educated and are literate. There are 190 million fewer women who have access to a financial institution. That means these are women around the world who are not allowed to have a bank account in their own name. Just think about that. For us, having a bank account or an ATM card could be something that it's normal, but there are women who don't have access to even the simplest of financial independence. Women spend 3 times more than men on unpaid work. So what does that mean? It's, a woman, when you go to work, when you come home, you're also expected to cook and clean and look after the children. But not all women have that, right? There are lots of men. My husband is like that. I can do all of the work I do because my husband supports me. We share the work at home. I don't have to do all the work by myself. In fact, he does more of the unpaid work at home than I do. But there are so many women who have full-time jobs and then they come home and they have another full-time job at home. Right? 90% of CEOs in companies and large companies are promoted or hired from what we call line roles, right? Line roles are management positions. So 90% of CEOs are promoted from these line roles. But women don't have an opportunity to get into basic management roles in these organizations. So how can we get into leadership roles? It will take more than 100 years to get equality at the C suite. That means the CEO, C level in every organization. It'll take more than 100 years to get equality for women around this. Just think about that. More than 100 years. My children, my grandchildren will be around hopefully by then, right? And less than 50% of employees and organizations believe that their company is actually doing something about this. So these are facts. These are the facts that McKinsey and Company collected over the course of their study. And this is what we are dealing with. This is why we need organizations like yours to get more women into organizations at all levels, right? So that we can get more women in science and technology and computer science and coding. It is so, so critical. So let me ask you a question that I asked recently. I asked a whole bunch of people on in my community, in the agile community that Andrea was mentioning, right? I asked, so what was the impact of you stepping into a leadership role? So some of the things I asked was, we had to, because I stepped into a leadership role as a woman, I had to give up some work-life balance. I had to give up this. I had to sacrifice that. So this is the question I asked of my community, and here's the answers I got. Right, about nearly 70% of the women who answered said they had to give up work-life balance. They had to take away time from family. They lost some time in fun and recreation, and that's because as a woman they believe that they had to work twice as hard in order to get the same level of recognition as men. So they had to work twice as hard, so they had to give up more stuff. This is the data for the women who are my generation, right? So that's why we need to make that shift so that as the younger generation that's coming up, we are actually able to change some of this data so we don't have to deal with this again. I remember talking to a much senior lady than myself. She's close to nearly 80 years old, and she's been working in the area of gender bias and reducing the gender gap for her entire life. And when I was talking to her about the work I'm doing, she said that she was very sad. She said she's nearly 80 years old, and she has been working nearly her entire adult life trying to fix a problem. And she said, now you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to fix this problem. When will it be time when we don't have to talk about this problem anymore? And I think that's why I was so excited to come talk here to say, let me share some data, let me share some ideas so you women and people who are supporting women as you go out into the world, maybe we can change this, and maybe in about 50 years, we have different conversations. Yeah. So some more data for you. We looked at which country in the world has the smallest gender gap, right? So when I started this, I thought, I'm in the US, and the US is supposed to be very modern and I believed that it would be the US, but I was very, very mistaken. And let's see what the data said, right? So the country that has the smallest gender gap, that means this is the country where women are treated nearly the same as men, is Iceland. If you look at the top 10, the US is not here. Um, in the last few years, the US has actually fallen off the top 10, and which is really sad. And if you look at it, there's so many. If you look at the next few states here, you look at all of these countries, Rwanda, Spain, they've actually risen up. Mexico and Ethiopia and Albania were the best improved countries in gender gap over the last 10 years. So this is what we have to deal with, right? And even in Iceland, it's 87% equality. There's still a gap, but it is the smallest gap anywhere in the world. So some more data for you before I get into what can we do about this. So when you look at the number of women who have been given positions in the board of directors of companies, and we looked at the data of how many companies have at least more than 1/3 of their board of directors as women. France was leading in that, right? France had 43% of their companies have more than 1/3 of women. Then you have Iceland and Sweden and Italy. All of these companies are up there. Again, I was sad to see that the US was not amongst the 1/3. Then we said, okay, let's look at what countries have 1/5. And you can see, for me, this is really sad that the US was at 21%. 21% of companies in the US have 1 out of 5 leaders is women. And that is pretty shameful. That is very, very shameful, right? For me, the more work that I'm doing is to make sure that these numbers, the next time this research is done, we don't see numbers like this. Staying with the McKinsey and Company numbers, so here's some more data. So you look at corporate pipeline. So what do we mean by that? It's think about men and women in entry-level positions, in management positions, and so on, the different levels of companies. So in 2015, if you look at the data, now much has changed at the C level, right? And the senior leaders is gone up from 17% to 21%. It's made a little bit of a difference. But then look at the entry level from 45% to 48%, not much difference. So this is the numbers that we need to change. It's not just at the senior level or the junior level, it's across the board. We need to make some changes, right? And it's data like this that's actually disheartening. But for me, I know that if we all work together, we can make sure that women are represented well at all levels of a company. So switching one more gear to years to gender parity. So let me ask you guys, so maybe you can throw some words in the chat window. Which region of the world do you think is the closest to getting gender parity? So maybe you can type in the chat window, which region in the world do you think it is? Is it Europe or Asia or Africa? What do you think is the region closest to gender parity? So we have some things, Europe. Andrea saying, a bunch of people saying Europe. Yep. So let me give you some data here. So Western Europe is the closest. It will take 54 years for Western Europe to close the gap and get to gender parity. 54 years. I'll be dead and gone by then, right? Latin America and the Caribbean are next. It will take 59 years to get gender parity in Latin America and the Caribbean, 71.5 years for South Asia, 95 years for Sub-Saharan Africa, 107 years for Eastern Europe and Central Asia, 140 years for the Middle East and North Africa. Notice a trend here. The US, North America, is not on this list. We're at 140 years, right? Um, it is just so sad. North America will need 151 years. I think I will have great grandchildren by then, hopefully. That's when it's going to take us that long. And what the data has shown that in North America, especially this last 2 years, the gender gap has increased. And then finally, it's going to take 163 years for East Asia and the Pacific region. This is heartbreaking data, right? Think about this. 151 years in North America, and North America believes that we are the most modern area in the world. And if we don't bring women along, how can we call ourselves the most modern or the most developed part of the world? We have not developed half a population, which is so sad. Um, so let's look at this. So there is a concept in the community that when we talk about women in leadership roles, it is called the glass ceiling, right? The glass ceiling is supposed to be this invisible barrier that is hard for women to break through, that prevents women from getting into senior leadership roles. We talk about it all the time, whether it's in companies or politics or academics. We talk about a glass ceiling that women can break, and that is the reason why women can't get into roles. But that's not completely true. It's the glass ceiling is responsible in some ways, but it is not the biggest obstacle to progress for women. The biggest obstacle is what we call the broken rung, right? It's called the broken rung. It's actually, if you look at the ladder, the glass ceiling comes in the topmost one. How do you get to the topmost rung of a ladder? The broken rung says the bottommost rung. How can we get women into the first step? How do we get women to code? How do we get women to stay in technology? How do we get women into that first management role? Because if we don't have women in the first layer, there won't be opportunities for women to grow. So that's the thing. It's how do we fix that broken rung, right? Because here's the data. Again, going back to some data, for every 100 men who are promoted, do you know how many women get promoted? It's ridiculous. For every 100 men who got promoted in the world, we have 72 women who get promoted. That's a huge difference, right? And if if we could fix that broken rung, that first step, we could have 1 million more women by the end of the next 5 years to get into senior level positions. That's what we need to fix, the broken rung. This glass ceiling is there because there are not enough people. There are not enough women up there. I know every time I walk into whether I'm helping a company interview their leaders, or we are looking at applications for certified Scrum trainers or coaches or anything else, like how many women are getting into technology roles. There's just not enough women there to choose from. So what we need to do is build a community so that we can fix that broken rung and fix that pipeline so that we have more women coming in. Right? So here are 5 things I believe companies can do to fix this issue. And how can we get more companies to take these steps. One, the first thing we want them to do is how can we get more women into first level roles? Now, most global companies, about really every company, has this thing of they say, well, we are going to get so many more women into leadership roles. That's their goal, right? They set up goals for that. We're going to increase the number of women leaders in senior leadership to 50%. That's great. But we also need to figure out how can we get them to set goals for the first level of management. Because as I said, if we don't have women coming in, we won't have women rising. So how we need to make sure companies are saying at every level of management, we are going to have so many such percentage of women. When we hire new people, we are going to also focus on this, right? So we want to get more women into first level positions. We want to make sure that when we are looking at candidates to hire, to bring into education, to universities, to colleges, to high schools, to first jobs, we are making sure that there are women who are on the slate. There are so many times I walk in to help a client do interviews and I see 8 men and 1 woman. And I'm like, why aren't there more women? And the usual reaction I get is, well, women aren't applying. So, how can we help women to apply? And it's absolutely by what your organization is doing. Women Who Code. Get women into science and technology and leadership, right? And that's how you grow this movement. You can't magically have more women show up there. It's by grassroots movements like yours that's going to eventually make a dent, that's going to make a change. So that's 2 things you can do. The third thing is this thing called unconscious bias. This is huge. I remember there was this one company that I was interviewing. I was helping interview candidates for a middle management role, and there were a couple of women and a lot of men. And one of the people in the interview panel actually made a comment about, so if we put these women into leadership roles, what happens when they get pregnant? That's an unconscious bias. Are you telling me that men are not going to be involved with their wives' pregnancies? Of course they are. Men also take time off from work to take care of their wives and babies. So why just talk about women and having this, right? That's an unconscious bias that we have because traditionally it has been women. But if you look at today, men and women at home are equal. Like I said in the beginning, my husband probably does more at home than I do because, like, here on a Saturday, I'm here doing a talk on getting more women on board, and he's taking care of, making sure we have groceries for dinner and all that stuff. We share. So the unconscious bias, we need to put all the people in an organization who are going to be hiring and promoting through this unconscious bias training because it's in our heads, right? It is what we've always been doing. And what we've seen is when organizations do unconscious bias training, it actually makes a difference because they are more open to the ideas that, well, yeah, so more women will join, and yes, and when we have young children, we won't be able to travel as much, but that applies to men as well. So how do we train people about what their unconscious biases are? We need to make sure that companies have right processes to hire people, to promote people. It has to be clear, and not because of gender, but it's just, do you have these criteria? And if it meets, it doesn't matter what your gender is, you are able to hire the right people. How can we make sure that every organization has a clear evaluation criteria and it's published? So then there's no fear about it. I can tell you even now, and I'm, I do a lot of talks in the community. Even now, when I submit a talk for a conference, it's always about, I always have this feeling. So if they have to choose between a man and a woman, who would they choose? So if every organization had clear requirements and the clear evaluation criteria, it would make so much more sense, and we would be able to um, make sure that more people were being involved in the process, right? So every candidate, regardless of gender, you are the same. The final thing is we need to put more women in line for the management roles. So what that means is we need to grow more women. Again, organizations like yours, how do we grow more women with their skills? One of the things I do a lot is I mentor women. I do a lot of coaching circles for women. And it's not about men are not allowed. I have a couple of men in my coaching circles too. We cannot fix this problem just by ourselves, right? If there is gender parity to be achieved, we need all the genders to work together so that we can achieve parity. You want to remove gender bias, just the women can't do it. We need men and all other genders involved to make sure that every gender is equally recognized, right? We need to do that. And for that, we need to make sure the building blocks are set up. How do we get more organizations like you around the world? How do we get leadership training for women? How do we ensure that organizations are considering women for high profile assignments? You see more and more women in various roles like the Supreme Court of the US, or journalists who are going into war torn countries. Previously, it was only men, but now women are stepping in. How about in the military of the different countries? We are beginning to see more women. So that's what we need to do. How do we get more women in? Right. So, what will you do to help? Since each one of us has to do our part, what will you do to help? So, what I'd love for you to do is take a minute, think about what we've talked about. Think about the information I've shared with you, and type into the chat window, what would you do? How would how would you help with reducing gender bias? So take a minute and type into the chat group, what would you try?
Hola a los participantes. Si pueden colocar qué harían con respecto a lo que acaban de ver, los puntos que Anu nos acaba de mostrar, ¿qué acción puntual tomarían desde su rol de negocio o desde la empresa que ustedes tengan, la iniciativa que ustedes tengan? ¿Qué paso concreto creen que pueden dar de inmediato en línea con estos puntos? Si quieren
Thank you,
ponerlo en
Andrea.
español, con gusto, y yo lo traduzco. No worries. Sure.
So, what would you do, Andrea?
What would I do? Oh.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, from my for the position I have now within my company, whenever, in fact, I did it when I had the opportunity to hire somebody, I explicitly requested HR to look for women
Okay.
and for men as well. I just asked, hey, I need at least one woman in the resumes that you give me
Mm-hmm.
because I want to make sure that I have all the possible candidates at hand. And that didn't mean that I was looking for women specifically. I was just making sure that I had the option.
Right.
So
That,
at least it was
yes.
one step. Yes.
Great. That's great. So you're making sure that in the pool you have more women, right? And we have a
Mm-hmm.
couple of people putting in the chat window. So Yvonne is saying we'll talk about the topics. having conversations about the need to have gender inclusion. That's all you need to do. Just have a conversation, increase the awareness. That's important, right? And Vivian, expose women in decision roles to empower her without having doubts about their capabilities. Absolutely, because here's the thing, we will have doubts, but we can't stop doing something because we have doubts. You want to give feedback, you want to give coaching on the process. Absolutely. Christina, suggest mentorship program in the company I work for. Exactly. Mentor other women. Imagine what you could do if each one of you mentored two women, just two. There are 11 people on the call. Right away, you have 22 women who have mentored. And your only ask is that each person you mentor mentors two more people. You're going to have within, I don't know, very soon, you're going to have these growing mentorship circles around the world, which is so amazing.
We
Right?
have another in the question and answers section.
Yes.
An anonymous attendee shared this type of talks with friends from both genders.
Yes, because as I said, we cannot fix gender issues unless all genders are involved. Without all genders being involved, what can you do? You're just talking, then it's just talk, talk, talk. Right? If you want to take action, we got to involve everybody in. Um, great answers, great thinking. I love this. So I'm going to share one more thing here. Um, so apart from changing the number of women in organizations, companies also need to invest in creating a strong culture. Right? Um, for example, I am from India. My country of origin is India. And India has a lot of women who are not allowed to be educated, who are not allowed to have jobs, very traditional, stay at home, get married when you're really young. And you have women like me who are out there. We had a prime minister years ago who was female. But we need companies in India and around the world to say, how can we create a culture that fosters more women, encouraging more women to come in, right? Um, I remember my first job that I went in, I was so nervous because I didn't know how to dress in a culture that was so strong about men in leadership roles. I didn't want to wear a suit, but since all the men wore suits, I had to wear a suit. But I was very uncomfortable in a suit. So it's just stuff like that. How do you create a culture, right? So there are three things that we can teach our organizations about how to create a strong culture. One, equal opportunity and fairness, and all of you have been talking about this, right? Increase the number of women we interview, increase the number of female resumes. Great. Increase fairness for opportunities. So just because a role requires travel doesn't mean you don't consider a woman. Maybe the woman who has to travel will have a husband like mine who loves to be at home and support me, right? You never know. So make sure the opportunities are there. Work life flexibility, allow for opportunities to be flexible. I mean, right now with COVID-19, everybody's working from home, but especially when women and for men have young children, allow the flexibility to work from home, or various other opportunities to go home in the afternoon so that you can take care of children. But we need more of that work-life balance. And then finally, a safe and respectful workplace. Sexual harassment is a big thing, right? And it's not just women, it's all genders that get harassed. And we need to make sure that if we want to bring about gender parity, we need to make sure work is safe. Right? Um, years ago, I used to work with this person who every time he would talk to women, he wouldn't talk to their faces. He would keep looking at their bodies up and down. And that was uncomfortable, right? It's like, come on, stop doing that. Um, so it's stuff like that. We need to make sure that across the board, it is a safe place for us to show up and be ourselves. Um, so these three things become a big part of being. How do you create this culture of equality, right? One more thing I want to share with you. So this is um, percentages of leadership capabilities. So just take a look at that, right? So the women are in blue, the men are in orange. So if you think about taking initiative, women take more initiative than men. Resilience, that is staying true to what we do. Women are more resilient than men. If you look at this data, there are two things where men are better, according to this study, which is technical and professional experience. So more men are technical, which organizations like you are going to fix, because you're going to get more women into coding and technology. So we got that. And then developing strategic perspective, where women are more operational. We work on getting stuff done, right? We just make stuff happen. So if you look at this data, all of these leadership capabilities, women are stronger, and yet we are not in as many leadership roles. That is what is surprising. And the reason for that is there are not enough women stepping up to be leaders. I know, like as a certified Scrum trainer, this year is different because of COVID. I haven't traveled much. But last few years, I've traveled a lot. That's my job, right? I coach and train, I go around and travel. And so many women I spoke to said, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to travel. So, how can we change the roles like coaching and training and leadership where we don't have to travel all the time, right? How can we make sure we can improve this? And when you think about this, if you look at gender leaders, it doesn't matter what your gender is, but yet in organizations it matters, right? So I have two more things I want to share and then we'll open up for questions. There's a great quote by this amazing lady, Sheryl Sandberg, right? If you haven't read her book Lean In, I would highly encourage you to read this. So I love this quote. In the future, there will be no female leaders. They'll just be leaders. Why should we differentiate between male leaders and female leaders? We will just be leaders. And that's when we will have achieved gender parity. And to look at an amazing leader, let's look at this. The first prime minister in this world that we live in today to have dealt with a major terrorist attack, a deadly volcanic eruption, and a pandemic, all in her first term of office while she had a baby. The Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. Imagine what she's done. She had a baby while in office, and she's dealt with all of this stuff. It can be done. And you think about all the great women leaders we've had. They've all had families, they've all had children and spouses and all the family obligations we all have, and yet they do it. And that's because they have been given an opportunity and they have an environment in which they can succeed. Leadership is a team sport. If you are looking to step into a leadership role as a woman, do not try and do it alone. Grab other women in your organization. Go find other men who are going to support you. Collectively, we are going to get to gender parity. I know it's not going to happen in my lifetime, But I'm hoping that by doing more talks like this and getting more awareness into what we can do around the world, that in my children's lifetime, or maybe in my grandchildren's lifetime, we will get to an opportunity where we will no longer be distinguished as female leaders. We will just be called leaders. So thank you for listening to me for the last, I don't know, 40 minutes or so. I appreciate you being here and listening and participating. So, um, what questions can I answer, if any?
Thank you so much, Annie, for such a oh my God, I'm speechless right now. Such an inspiring talk. I would love if there are any questions, you guys, or any comments, so that we can take advantage of the last few minutes to have a conversation about such an important topic. ¿Alguna pregunta que tengan, algún tema del que quieran hablar? Bien, lo pueden poner en español y yo con mucho gusto se los traduzco.
So, great question by Christina. Many of us as women have experienced the imposter syndrome. So, for me, the best tool for an imposter syndrome is having an accountability partner. What does that mean? So for me, I have an accountability partner, my best friend in the whole world. Her name is Kate. She is my accountability partner. Anytime I start going, I don't know, I don't think I'm good at that, I'm not as good as that person, oh no, I can't do it, I call her. The minute I recognize that voice that's telling me, no, 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 I'm going to fail, I'm not going to be good, I call her and I say, all right, I need you to tell me, I'm trying to do this, what do you think? And we have an agreement with each other where we talk to each other when we are struggling so that we can be honest and be helpful to each other. So a lot of times when I'm doing talks, I will first do my talk to her and say, so what do you think? Was that good? Do you think it'll go well? And then she'll help me. So the accountability partner, having somebody to talk to, and that somebody is who can support you, that for me, that has been the best thing, because the imposter syndrome is a saboteur voice. It is our own saboteur that is speaking. So first step is recognizing it. And the second step is, when it happens, go talk to somebody who can help you recognize that you are brilliant, you're amazing, you're capable. You totally can do this as well, if not better than anybody else. It's that building of the confidence that removes the imposter syndrome. So for me, that's the best key. Creating accountability groups and accountability partners. And practice, 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 practice with your women friends all the time. Any other questions? And by the way, Andrea, I will send you my slides as a PDF, so you'll be able to share that with your group as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I was very impressed about the graph that mentioned a lot of leadership qualities that
Yeah.
we women have. That I'm not sure exactly how that is measured. However, seeing a lot of those skills or those capabilities being more present in women is very, very interesting. Is there any way that you would suggest that we could make like take advantage of those qualities and make them more evident in the workplace?
Oh, great question. So how do I make so as a woman, one of the qualities that we are better is to take initiative. Right? And I'm going to go back to what Christina said, the imposter syndrome. A lot of times, the reason we are not able to make those skills and talents visible is the imposter syndrome. So
Mm-hmm.
when we take initiative, and suppose you have a great idea, I've seen it so many times that women who have brilliant ideas will turn to a male partner in the organization and say, hey, I have a great idea. Do you want to partner with me? So stop doing
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Partner with another woman, right? Um,
Yes.
um, Take credit for what you're doing, and that the imposter syndrome becomes a big key. Talk to another woman when you're looking at these, when you have ideas. Go and do your ideas. And if it fails, it's okay. You learn something from it and you move along. For me, that's the thing. Find other partners, right? Uh,
Mhm.
Here's some more questions. Great, I love these questions. What is something you would say to young women with interest in leadership positions? How can they prepare? What initial steps may they take? It's a good question. So I'm thinking of my daughters, and as I think about them, so they are 23 and 19, young women about to do this. So first, so I'll tell you what I tell my daughters, right? Every opportunity, my younger one is in college, so I push them. Every opportunity they get to lead, I push them into stepping into leadership roles. My older daughter, when she was in high school, and of course, this is me bragging a little bit as well. My older daughter, when she was in high school, I happened to see this posting on some website that said, looking for high school uh, students to be part of the council for the city.
Mhm.
And I pushed her to apply, and she goes, I don't want to apply. I'm like, yes, you're applying. And she actually got to work with the city council for a whole year. I, when I go to conferences, I take my daughters with me because I want them to see that it's not just me. There are other women out there who are amazing and are doing great. So if you have young women who you know who are trying to figure out what it means, show them. Show them what it means to be a great leader. And not just you, show them other women and say, look at all these amazing women who are leading. How do you want to, don't you want to be like them? Another step forward, if you have young women who are going, I don't know if I want to do this, find them a mentor. Be their mentor and guide them, right? Um, One of the things I want to work for next year, I want to create a mentorship circle for college girls, because girls in college is where you're going to form your leadership stance. So how can we make that better? So do things like that. There are a lot of, also there are a lot of organizations that do leadership training for young girls. Some of them are very expensive, I know that, but you create a leadership program for young girls. You don't have to wait for somebody else to create it, you create it. And if you want to do something like that in Guatemala and you want me to help you, count me in. I'm in. I will help you create a leadership program for young women. We can set up a teaching class, we can do some coaching and get them started. I'm in. Right? Ask people, ask other women like me. I guarantee most of us will say yes. Hope that helped. Right? I put my daughters in that position and said, what would I do for them? Um, the culture of our country diminishes the capability of women in leadership. And even when we believe we can, we end up unbelieving we have what it takes. I am from India. I know what you mean. Um, even today, I have male relatives who ask me, when I tell them, I said, yeah, we have a company. And they say, oh, your husband has a company. I said, no, I have a company. I employ him. And they go, no, 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 that's not what you mean. Your husband owns the company. I'm like, no, he doesn't. I own my company 100%. And they go, really? What does he do? I'm like, he supports me. So it is so hard to get past it. Um, I remember growing up in India where I was I was very, very lucky. My parents believed that their daughters and their son should have the same opportunities. We were very lucky. I have first cousins who didn't have that opportunity. I have some cousins who were married off when they were 18 because they were girls, and the boys got on. to have education and wait till they were 20 something to get a job and then get married. So I understand that um, you cannot change the culture of the entire country. Start changing the culture in amongst the group you're in. Start there, just there. And then when people see what you're able to do, it spreads. When you want to bring change, Mahatma Gandhi has said this, right? Be the change you want to be. So if you want to make change, if you want women to be more empowered, you want women to step into leadership roles, you start. And yes, you will have people who don't believe in you. Don't listen to the people who don't believe in you. I know it's hard, but if I had listened to everyone who said, "You're never going to do this," I don't know what I would be doing. I wouldn't be here. Don't listen to the people who don't believe in you. When you get that imposter syndrome thing talking in your head, go talk to your accountability partner. Believe in yourself. And when you see other people disbelieving in a woman, you believe in her. You stand up for her and tell her that you believe that she can do it. Work with each other. That's what we can do. There's nothing else, no easy way to get past it. Um, Next question. As a mother, how did you handle expectations? As a mother, I'm also a mother, and I struggle with trying to be a good mother, but also making progress as a professional woman. That was the hardest thing, Yvonne. I don't think I ever managed the balance. I have a lot of guilt about not being there when my kids were younger. I had to travel. So for me, what worked was the fact that I have a very supportive partner. Right? When I was traveling, every day we would have a call at night. So we would be on video, we would talk. Back then, sometimes we didn't have video, so we would talk with the girls. Um, for me, it's when they were really little, I wasn't traveling much. But then as they started growing older, I remember bringing them to the office. This is before I started traveling. I would bring them to the office. So a lot of times after school, um, I s- and I have people who still remember my daughters coming into the bank. I used to work at a bank. Um, I would run out at lunchtime so I could go pick up my kids from school. They would come hang out in my office while I was working the rest of the day because my husband was busy doing something else. And I think it was helping them understand right from a young age that as a woman, I'm not just a mother. I'm also a professional working woman. I was leading organizations and teams, and that I wanted to show them what I was doing so that they could take pride in me, the whole me. So not just the mom me or the working me. I showed them the entire me so that they could recognize it. Did that Was that successful? When they were younger, I doubted that. I had lots of doubts myself. I was like, I'm not being a good mother because I'm not spending time with them. But now that they're older, I think I did good because I see them now. And when I talk to them, they are trying, both of them in their own way, are trying to find their own balance of being a woman, being a girlfriend, being a worker. They're trying to find their own balance. And I think based on that, I think I was successful. They're not giving up things for a boyfriend. So for me, I think maybe by showing them that I was doing all of this stuff and making them part of that is paying off now. But I can tell you that guilt I have of missing a dance recital, of missing some things will never go away. And that applies to men as well, right? Fathers miss things too, and that guilt doesn't go away. And yes, Yvonne, just remember, thank you for asking that question, right? For me, it's being the mother is not all that I am. I love that part, but I'm also a wife. I'm also a sister. I'm also an aunt. I'm also the president of my company. I'm also a trainer and a coach and a speaker and all of this stuff. So be honest with your guilt and own your guilt and go forward. Don't let the guilt stop you. That's all. Right? Because otherwise later on you'll not only have guilt, you'll also have regret that I didn't do something. So, and I talk to my girls now, right? I tell them, I said, I feel so guilty that I missed that dance. And they go, no, we get it, but you were there at this other dance. And because I made them part of it, I think we are now able to have a conversation about that. There's another question. Most of us in the call work with many men and compete for management positions. What would you advise us? Be you. Just be 100% yourself. Um, don't try and do what the men do because you're not a man. You're a woman. You're a brilliant woman. Do what you do best, right? Some organizations will recognize you and promote you and give you opportunities. Stay there. Be amazing there. Some organizations will not give you the opportunity because they're going to not recognize what you do. Quit that company. Go somewhere else. They don't deserve you. Um, there is no point in banging your head against a wall that will not break. No point at all. Right? That's not what you're here for. You're not here to prove yourself. You don't have to prove yourself. You're here to show what you're capable of. And do not try and compete with what men do. Just do you. Be authentically you. And that is recognized. And for me, I know from the time, you know, I used to, when I first got into management, I used to try and do what the men used to do. And I was not succeeding. I was trying to be a manager just like the other men managers were. And, you know, it didn't work for me. It was when I showed up as me that I truly became a good leader. Until then, I was not being very good. So just be you. And when you get stuck, go ask your friend, your accountability partner, hey, I'm stuck. Tell me what I can do. And when your friend comes and asks you, give 100% honest advice. Don't be nice. If you think your friend is not doing a good job, say so. Help them. Be 100% honest with your girlfriends or with anybody who asks for your opinion. Being nice to your friends won't get them to be great leaders. Be honest. Thank you for these great questions, these amazing questions.
Right? What a great conversation to have been. I'm
Yeah.
very such inspiring words. So honored to hear you today, says Christina, and I can totally mirror that comment. Um, the reason why I said before that I was speechless is because it is a bittersweet feeling, right? Like
Yeah.
seeing all the data and having the heart broken
Yeah.
um, while reading that data, and then just understanding that we are part of the of we are needed in this evolution, and we just cannot put our heads in the ground so we don't see the data and say we
Exactly.
cannot do anything. On that's precisely the other way around. We can do a lot, and this conference, I think, it has inspired a lot of us in that path. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you. And I am I am thankful for a platform to speak, and thank you for those of you who stayed and attended and asked great questions. Great conversation. You've made me think as well. So I know one of the things I want to do that's coming out is I've always been talking to my younger daughter about helping girls in college at university level to step into more leadership roles. I know one of the things I am going to do, and I put it on my little sticky note so I remember, is in 2021, I'm going to work with my daughter in her college and even my older daughter to say, how can I create a coaching circle for girls, young women, to step into leadership roles? I want to do that. And if you guys want to be part of that, if you want to do some part of that in Guatemala, count me in. I think we need to step up and show up in order to make a change, right? So let's do it together.
Thank you so much for that. And we are going to take your word on that.
Do that. Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
thank you so much. I have some final words that I would like to share with you guys. So I will just steal your screen for a little bit,
I'm going to stop sharing.
if you don't
Yeah.
mind. Okay. So please join, be part of the community. Here is a QR where you can go and you can give us feedback. You can give us your comments, your questions, or you can do it via our social media. I felt so identified with a lot of the stuff you were saying. For example, what you're mentioning about the imposter syndrome. Not sure if I'm actually sharing. Am I?
No,
I'm not, right? Okay, I'm gonna share it right now. Sorry about that. Uh, I think I am now. Okay. So, what you were mentioning about the imposter syndrome, um, one thing that I read in an article, it was that it impacts the amount of women sending their resumes because they don't believe that while reading the description of the job, they don't believe that they're or good enough or they have to fill 100% of the description of the job position before sending the CV. So that imposter syndrome is something that it actually impacts from the beginning of the journey. So I think that was very important for you to mention as well. It is very important for you guys to just grab all this information, try to digest it and share with your friends, share with your male partners as well, so that they can be part of a more equal and a more beautiful world. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope to see you in our next meeting from Women Who Code. Thank you so much, Anu. Really appreciate your time. And you guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you. You're
Yeah.
always welcome in Guatemala whenever you want to come.
I already told Gerardo I am going to, as soon as all this pandemic stuff is taken care of, I am definitely going to make a trip to Guatemala. Sounds like a beautiful, beautiful country. So I'm definitely interested for sure.
It is. Thank you so much, you guys.
Awesome.
Have
Thank
a
you.
great day.
Bye. Have a wonderful weekend.
Goodbye, Anna. Thank
Bye.
you.